Thanks for tuning in to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. One of the things that we're seeing show up on soil tests across the country is no surprise. It's high pH. And we get the question all the time, how big a deal is having some high pH spots out in my field? It's a huge deal, especially if you want to reach high yields. We'll show you how to solve those high pH problems.
One of the most commonly talked about micronutrients over the last few years has been manganese. People are talking about, oh, in Roundup crops you have to have manganese. And are we missing manganese out there where it could help our yields? Well, hey, this is a micronutrient. It wouldn't cost much to throw it out there. So we'll talk today about whether or whether not you need manganese in your crops this year.
We have a very tough to control and frustrating weed of the week. We'll explain why this weed is such a challenge, but first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk a little about field variation and how it affects farmers' crops.
Oh, wow. Where do we start with field variation? When we think about one of our topics today on the show is going to be high pH soils versus low pH soils. That's a big deal. Let's just start here. Since we're kind of on a hillside and we've got a valley behind us. Hey, how about hills and valleys? What a difference does that make for farmers? When you think about where things are going to dry out in the summer, the valleys a lot of times stay moist quite a bit longer. And many times farmers will say, my best part of my whole farm is through that valley because it stays moist there for the crop all year long. Where the hilltop, well, it's up there in the sun and the wind and the soil's a little lighter up there and my crop shortens up and I don't get the yield that I get down in the low area. Just topography can make a huge difference.
I think it's pretty easy to see and to understand why there are such huge variations out there in fields. But here's one of the problems. Over the last 100 years on the farm in the United States, a lot of people have managed the whole field the same way, and really maybe even their entire farm, all their fields, managed it exactly the same way.
Well, talk about Ukraine, Brian, when we were in the Ukraine.
Yeah, and they're managing 10,000 hectares, all exactly the same. So 25,000 acres, all the same way. Well, you can't do that if you want to maximize productivity, and you know that yourself. If, let's say, you have a home garden, there's a certain place you want to have that garden where it's got the best soil, right? And you're going to treat that soil differently than you would treat a different type of soil. So what we're now doing on the farm is what we call precision farming. So we're actually going out and soil sampling all these different areas separately. We're finding out what this area needs versus the other area, and then we're managing those areas separately as well. We're fertilizing them different. We're planting different populations in those areas, spraying different things or different rates in those areas. So that's really kind of what this all comes back to is on the farm, we used to just farm everything the same way. Now we're farming just small pieces of each field differently so we can better maximize productivity.
Well, farmers have always known that there's this tremendous variability out in fields, but they never really had a visual demonstration of that until we got yield monitors. Once we had yield monitors, farmers would see going through the field, hey, I have 250 bushel corn, and then a few hundred feet later, they've got 80 bushel corn. And yeah, I knew it wasn't as good in that spot, but I didn't realize financially it was costing me that much money just with the variations that are out there in the soil.
Well, the other thing is, as farmers, even if we knew there was a difference, we couldn't really manage it separately because our planters would plant the same population all the way across the field, our sprayers would spray the same thing across the field, and our fertilizer spreaders would spread it the same across the whole field. Well, now we've got a way to do this very inexpensively. So a few years ago, it was basically only great big applicators could afford to do this. Well, now it probably only costs $5 an acre to get your whole farm set up. It's not a big deal. A lot of planters already come equipped this way. A lot of sprayers, you can have different rates and you can put in variable prescriptions. And then we've set up our strip till machine, our anhydrous bar, our dry fertilizer spreader for very little money, and we can control those things now with prescriptions. It's very nice, so we don't have to manually figure, oh, I'm getting to this area, I gotta change things. No, it's all done by computer, so literally the rate changes and you can see it in the cab as you're going through the field. All of a sudden that rate changes, you go, oh, I must have hit that area that's good or hit that area that's bad because my rate changed.
I think there's one thing there that you mentioned, Brian, that pertains to farmers who are listening to this, is instead of looking at, wow, that's $1,000 or that's $2,000 to set up my planter or my sprayer that way, look at it as a cost per acre and say, wow, I've got 1,000 acres that I farm. Okay, it's $2,000 worth of equipment. That's $2 an acre. And now I'm set up forever to be able to make these changes. That's pretty important. I look at just for homeowners, you mentioned the garden differences. I think there's differences in the lawn too. And you see, all right, in the middle of the summer, hey, the grass is still growing pretty good in this part of my lawn. In this part of my lawn, it's pretty brown already and it's not growing very well. And we see that. There's variability no matter where you're at in soils. It's just on the farm we make our living off getting all that soil to be productive. So farmers many times nowadays are managing the highly productive soils and the less productive soils a little bit different to try to get more production out of that lower productivity soil and really to try and maximize what they can get on their best ground.
Well, unfortunately, one of the reasons the bad ground might be bad is because of our Weed of the Week, but we'll tell you how to stop it on your farm coming up later in the show.
Your time is valuable. That's why you need a Hagie STS application system. Hagie STS products are designed for precision and efficiency, allowing you to make applications all season long with just one machine. Contact your Hagie rep today.
No one understands your farm, your field, and your soil like you. I'm Myron Stein, and at Stein Seed Company, we know your field demands a choice. That's why Stein's corn breeding program combines our industry-leading genetics and superior standability with the most sought-after traits, giving you the best choices for maximum yield. Learn more about Stein's hybrid lineup by visiting steinseed.com or contacting your local Stein Seed dealer.
How will you secure your farm for the future? The Quasar Chopping Cornhead from Capello USA will help. Our design is focused on efficiency, longevity, and reducing harvest loss, making the Quasar the corn harvest solution to bring your farm forward. With hundreds of units ready for immediate delivery, secure your farm's future today. Do it for your farm. Do it for them. Order now. Capello USA. Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
Presenting the new 2016 Apache sprayer. If you could save money and increase yield, why wait? Delaying change can cost you money.
It's phenomenal the return of investment it brings back. In my mind, a sprayer is the biggest return of investment you can bring back.
Apache owners apply in half the time of a full type, apply when they want versus custom, and spend less than Hydrostat owners, not to mention less weight on their crops. Go ahead and compare. We hope you do. Visit etsprayers.com to locate a dealer and how to save with an Apache. Apache, now more than ever.
There are no marks of conflict lining this landscape. No echoes of economic hardship. Just the unmistakable murmur of Mother Nature's hand. In the perennial quest to outperform, ensure your crop gets the nutrients it craves with a Veil Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Nothing helps protect your investment more, so you can grow confidently no matter what comes your way. Avail. Hold your ground.
Regalia RX biofungicide activates a plant's natural defense system, limiting the effects of disease and improving overall plant health. Regalia RX complements your fungicide program to optimize yield and strengthen return on investment. Ask your retailer for Regalia RX today.
How can you manage your high pH soil? Well, the first thing you've got to do is figure out if you have high pH soil. So if you're running composite soil tests, you got to stop. You've got to run grid tests or zone tests, and let's find out, because even in our own operation, for years we thought, oh, our pH is pretty good. It kind of averages or somewhere around 7. I hear that a lot. Averages around 7. Yeah, it does, but the problem is you got 7.8 or 8.2, and then you've got a 5.9 or 6.1. Well, both of those are bad. Yes, the average sounds good, but we absolutely have to be addressing those soil pHs, especially once we get above 7.3.
Just really quickly, with soil tests, we get a lot of questions about, do I need grids, zones? Soil pH is the most important thing that you have to get grid soil sampled out on your farm. Now, the next thing is you've got to have hope, because we see so many guys just say, you know what? I've got an 8 pH. That's just how it is around here. I'm not going to do anything about it. And they have no hope. Once you lose hope, you're giving up lots and lots of yield. I would venture to guess you're giving up at least 30% of your yield, and that's what the tests have shown by reputable labs and universities across the country. You're giving up 30% or more of your crop before you even start. And to me, that's a reason that I have lots of hope of, wow, okay, I have this problem and there's 30% more out there I could have. That's 30% of my bottom line. That would be big for me if I could get it. On 200 bushel corn, if you're getting that now, that's 260 bushel corn you should be getting. Wow, I can do a lot with 60 extra bushels. I can afford to invest some money to try and solve these problems, and it will take an investment and a time commitment to solve high pH soils.
One thing you got to understand too is every crop has a little different pH range that it thrives in. So crops like barley and sugar beets, for example, will do better in a little higher soil pH. Alfalfa absolutely has to have a soil pH close to 7. Whereas for corn, soybeans, and wheat, the ideal range we're kind of talking about here is 6.3 to 6.8. But nevertheless, any crop we're talking about, once you get above that 7.3, 7.5 kind of range, you've got problems. Okay, so how are you going to fix that? That's really the key. Well, the first thing that we would tell you is most of the time it's a drainage issue. And that's typically how we've helped farmers fix these high soil pHs around the country. It doesn't happen instantly, but it does happen over a long period of time. Just by improving the drainage, you can lower your soil pH. But please understand, okay, if you've got a 40 cation exchange capacity, in other words, super heavy soil, you can't get by with 100-foot spacings with your drain tile. You probably need 20 or 30-foot spacings with your drain tile. If you've got medium soil, like a lot of the stuff that we would farm, then hey, 50-foot spacing, probably just fine. But you have to have good drainage. That's the whole key, because the problem is when you don't have good drainage, you have a buildup of salts. You also have a lot less roots there, a lot less soil life there, and all those things will lead to a higher soil pH.
All right, another place where we see high pH soils, I've talked to guys with light sandy soils that are irrigating, and they say, I don't understand it, my soil pH keeps going up. And when we look at high pH irrigation water, that can certainly be a way that you keep increasing your problem. And you say, well, I've got great drainage underneath. Yes, you do, but you keep putting more high pH water over the top. You can certainly treat that water before you put it out on your field to lower that pH and get things in line. Or if you've got some dramatic nutrient imbalance in that water that's coming out of your well or your aquifer where you're at, you can certainly treat for those things too. So talk to your irrigation specialist in your area about what your specific problem is and take a good water quality sample to find out exactly what kind of water you're putting out in your field. Makes a huge difference.
Let's say you have a garden or maybe just a small field that you want to instantaneously lower that soil pH. You absolutely can do it with elemental sulfur. All right, there are formulas out there depending on your cation exchange capacity, in other words, how heavy your ground is, how much organic matter you have, as to how much sulfur you need, elemental sulfur, to immediately bring that soil pH down. Now that'll be a temporary fix, but you can do it. Okay, on a full field basis, we farm 2,700 crop acres. Let's say that we had, and we don't, but let's say we had 1,000 acres of that. I'm not going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in elemental sulfur. It's probably not going to pay. But if you wanted to try a little bit of elemental sulfur, let's say 25 or 50 pounds banded over the row, that very well could help. And just in that row to get in the root zone a better soil pH.
Okay, another thing with high pH soils, and we do have some of this on our farm, is some very hilly ground that has suffered from soil erosion over a long period of time. There's a field that I picked up a few years back. They put some terraces in there in the 1990s. And even so, terraces aren't going to stop the erosion, but they're going to help a little bit. But the damage was already done in that field. The hilltops had virtually no topsoil left. Brian gives me a hard time a lot that I'm farming the subsoil, and I really am on those hilltops. And what we see is pH is just going way off the charts. So you may say, well, that's not a drainage issue. Kind of it is, in that we let the water run off so fast it took all the soil too. So we do have to deal with that in that kind of situation with reduced tillage, with crops that have a lot of roots, and trying to build up organic matter and soil fertility over a long period of time.
So here's what we suggest for those areas. That's where we've got to build new topsoil. And right away you're going to say, wow, I can't build new topsoil. Yes, you absolutely can. Here's how you do it. You reduce tillage, going no-till's best. You use manure, you use cover crops, you use biological products, and then raise crops with lots of roots. And yes, we all want it to happen instantly, but that's not going to be the case. But over the next 20 years, you absolutely could build new topsoil there, lower the soil pH, and get dramatically more yield.
Don't listen to all the naysayers out there that say you can't change a high pH soil. It doesn't cost you a penny to do this. You just reduce your tillage and raise crops that have lots of roots underneath them to help build organic matter. It can be done. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, but just look at your soil test results over a 3, 5, 10-year time period. You'll see a marked improvement in your soil's productivity over time.
Well, unfortunately, even if you get your soil pH right, that doesn't mean that your weeds are all going to disappear. I sure wish they would. Can you identify this week's Weed of the Week?
At Fisher Tradition Farms, we Verus all of our acres, and any new additional acres are automatically Verus. Verus maps allow us to know exactly where our soil types change and how much they change. We use AgroLiquid's Enhance, High Energy N, and Access that allows us to add sulfur. We can customize our AgroLiquid products on a per pound, per acre basis as needed.
For lower costs, higher production, Mandico Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Avoid costly downtime with Twister's ease of maintenance. Its unique Coulter suspension allows it to follow the contour of the field yet remain forgiving in rocks. Our hydraulically adjustable Coulter angles mean you never leave the cab, making residue management easier, more efficient. Spring or fall, the Mandico Twister is the new leader. Check with your local dealer or visit mandicoagri.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a Soil Max Gold Digger tile plow. Soil Max tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a Soil Max Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with Soil Max. Visit soilmax.com.
With the success of the Case IH Tiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. But only Case IH offers a 5-axle design to give you a smoother ride, more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
Over the last few years, a lot of people have been talking about manganese, that, oh my goodness, we got a manganese problem because Roundup's tying up all the manganese. Let me just first say, from what we found in our studies, that's a bunch of hokum. Okay, we've done a whole bunch of tests with super ridiculous, crazy high rates of Roundup and still haven't found any shortages of manganese. But what really is going on is across the board, a lot of farmers actually are a little short of manganese. To start with, there isn't enough in the soil. So take a look at your soil test. It's not the Roundup that's causing the problem. It's the fact that you didn't fertilize with manganese.
So when we're speaking about manganese, it is a micronutrient. The first key is just to find out what you have. As Brian is mentioning with the soil test, take a good complete soil test so you can actually see what you have. Now, just because you may have some on a soil test, you still need to find out with plant tissue analysis if you're getting it into your crop. And if you're curious about this whole Roundup thing, here's what we encourage you to do. Go pull some plant tissue analysis, then spray your Roundup after it, and then pull plant tissue analysis again and see, did it really change my manganese levels in my crop?
Here's what we're looking for in the soil test is 20 to 40 parts per million on a Midwest lab soil test. Please understand every soil lab does extractions different, and we want that number to be less than iron. Okay, it doesn't have to be a lot, just less than iron. That's kind of what we're shooting for. With the plant tissue analysis, we just want to find our manganese in the normal range, not completely deficient. So you can certainly treat the soil, you can do some foliar feeding. It all depends on how short you actually are on manganese. The cheapest way to get it's going to be manganese sulfate if you need to apply a bunch to the soil. Otherwise, there are many different forms of manganese and different blends of products that have manganese in them.
There are a number of functions within the plant that manganese is very important for, and that's the thing with these micronutrients. They aren't the key building blocks for building a great big tall plant, but they are very important in the functions within the plant. Like in photosynthesis, for example, magnesium happens to be the center of that chlorophyll molecule, but manganese is also very important with photosynthesis. The other thing I should mention too, when we're looking at many of the micronutrients, manganese included, is once they're in the plant, they're going to stay where they're put because they're so important for the functions going on. So as your plant grows taller and puts new growth on, if you can't find enough manganese in the soil, it's going to express itself in the upper part of the plant. Here's another reason I believe many people talk about, hey, I put on Roundup and now I see this manganese deficiency. Okay, well, yeah, it's at the top of the plant, and you know what? There's plenty of manganese down in the lower part of the plant, but it doesn't move within the plant. So once it's in those lower leaves, it stays there. The upper leaves, you've got to pull more manganese in if you want to have enough for them.
Well, once again, manganese is tremendously important in the plant. It's not magnesium we're talking about today, it's manganese. It's a micronutrient. Test your soil for it and get plant tissue analysis as well.
Well, you don't need any plant tissue analysis to determine what our weed of the week is, but we will show you how to stop it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our weed of the week is Biennial Wormwood Sage.
Keyword there being biennial. That means we have a 2-year life cycle. So what we see in the case of Biennial Wormwood Sage, and the same would be true with many of the biennials that we're fighting, is we'll see that first year just growth in kind of a rosette. And then it's putting in a big root system and starting to develop that so it's ready to go into the reproductive stages in year 2.
Where we do see this weed more often is in reduced tillage situations. So on our own farm, I'd never seen this weed before until we started doing some no-till and strip till. Well, once we got into those types of tillage systems, we weren't going through with this aggressive tillage to wipe it out in year 1, so then year 2 would come along and oh my goodness, we got this terrible weed problem coming. So this is why we talk so much about the herbicide option. If you're into heavy tillage, that's probably going to take care of it on your farm. You're probably not going to see this. But if you're looking for a good herbicide option in the fall, since we're in the fall right now, our best solution for you is to spray a high rate of 2,4-D if it's going to be going to soybeans next spring, or if it's going to corn, then we'd probably say a high rate of Banville in the fall. And by high rate, I mean a quart of Banville or 2 quarts of LV6 for the 2,4-D, just very high rates. We gotta hit it hard. And the other big key is spray on a day that's warm. If you can luck out and get a 70, 75 degree day, that's the day you go hit it.
So in the spring, we can use pre-emerge herbicides. I really like Sharpen. That can be used in front of corn, soybeans, or wheat. In soybeans, we can't use a high enough rate though to do a great job on Biennial Wormwood Sage. I like Metribuzin. That works great in front of soybeans. I like Balance Flex and Corvus in front of corn. Those are good options. And then post-emerge, I do like dicamba containing products like Status and corn. In wheat, I like Husky, but you have to use the high rate if you're going to do a decent job on Biennial Wormwood. And then in soybeans, good luck. There's not much that does a great job. I'd use a high rate of Roundup or the high rate of Liberty in Roundup or Liberty Link soybeans.
Real quick, you can also use Gramoxone in the spring. That's a good way to wipe this particular weed out. And I do like in soybeans that combination of Metribuzin and Authority or Valor, or possibly even Sharpen, but get that Metribuzin in there.
That's all time we have for this week's weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots from Monsanto Bioag is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more, and is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Get Quick Roots today.
This year's projected U.S. soybean yield will lose over $500 million per point in shrink. Eliminate shrink in your bin. Store grain without lowering moisture content with the AgriDry Bullseye Temperature and Moisture Controller. The Bullseye monitors air temperature and relative humidity, allowing your fans to utilize the weather's natural condition to maintain your grain at market moisture. Fan run times drastically decrease along with the cost of over-drying. Eliminate shrink today. Call now.
I've been involved in developing new technologies in agriculture for over 3 decades. The changing times demanded that we develop new and better equipment. Dry powder applications on seed can only be highly successful if they can be easily, effectively, and accurately applied to the target. That's where our company, Changing Times and CT Applicators, come into the picture. The innovative CT Applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, soybean inoculants, or other dry products. Remember, CT Applicators for the changing times.
We've been dealing with AgriLiquid a little over 7 years. I was skeptical, to be honest, but I watched the results from several clients. Those results were increased production and reduction in input cost. With AgriLiquid, we saw an increase in the size of the initial root mass. For ranchers, that means forage production a lot quicker. AgriLiquid works. The bottom line is profitability.
Are you wasting money applying the wrong fertilizers on your farm? Here are 3 easy steps to finding out. First, download the free Ag PhD soil test app. Next, pull your own samples. You can probably sample 1,000 acres a day using 5-acre grids. Finally, submit the samples and get both Ag PhD and Midwest Labs recommendations. You can also quickly and easily build your own variable rate application maps and controller files. Go to agphdsoiltest.com to learn more.
Take a look inside any rotary combine, and you'll find single rotor technology. Technology Case IH introduced over 35 years ago with the axial flow combine. But unless it gives you more bells and whistles with fewer belts and chains, more power using less fuel, it's not an axial flow. Because while the heart of every rotary combine beats red, only Case IH gives you the power to do more.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Anhydrous ammonia applications are going down in popularity due to regulations and the safety of use compared to other nitrogen alternatives. However, anhydrous is sometimes a considerably cheaper alternative. While we can't control the politics or costs, we can take steps to increase user safety. That's the topic of today's Iron Talk. The first thing to consider is personal protection. Wear tight-fitting, chemical-proof goggles or a full-face respirator. Rubber gloves that protect against anhydrous are also a must. Look for cracks on hoses or signs of wear or slippage around couplers. While most experienced operators aren't scared of a little bit of product in the lines, you are taking a risk if you don't purge the lines each time you unhook or inspect them. Check the toolbar quick coupler regularly and replace as recommended or as wear dictates. When switching from tank to tank, always make sure that your hoses are the proper length. Also, always use the safety chains and hitch pin with safety clip to ensure that hoses aren't stretched and a tank never comes unhooked. When moving to and from fields, never exceed 25 miles per hour. So be careful and be safe if using anhydrous ammonia this fall. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a quick till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune into the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us on channel 147 on Sirius XM at 2 p.m. Central and airing at 11 p.m. Central also each weekday.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show, where we'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
American ethanol is made primarily from corn. Did you realize that the type of corn used for ethanol and livestock feed is much different than the sweet corn on your dinner table? For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.